Let's talk about inquiry in the classroom, a video series presented by Madly Learning. On this episode, we're talking about getting started with inquiry using knowledge building circles and WonderWalls. Today I wanted to talk about WonderWalls and inquiry and starting inquiry off in your classroom and how I use both WonderWalls and knowledge building circles to introduce inquiry in my classroom and get it started. I find that both knowledge building circles and WonderWalls introduce the topic of inquiry and set the stage for what inquiry is going to look like in your classroom. So to start, what I do is I end up grabbing artifacts such as, like for the human body unit, I would grab a stethoscope, a twig or a branch to represent the association with the lungs. I also would use pictures that I find on the internet. I print those off in color because I often don't have access to real live artifacts for things like bridges and human body stuff and all of the other topics that are covered in 4-5. So I grab all those artifacts, put them all together, and I set the students up in a circle. In the center of my classroom, I have a carpet. So I set them up in a circle. We want to make sure that all the students are not looking and facing you, that you are not the person in the center of the learning, that the artifacts and the things that you've collected, they're sitting in the center of the circle. One of the problems that I found early is sitting in a circle. If you sit on the ground, if the students are starting to get into knowledge building circles and you sit on the ground with them, they have a really difficult time transitioning with that learning and not seeing a very clear leader. So the first time I did a knowledge building circle and I sat on the floor was a bit of a mistake. We had a difficult discussion that day. What I found out is when I'm starting those knowledge building circles, if I sit higher, like on a chair in the circle, students are still functioning in the traditional knowledge building circle, but they see you as higher, so they see you as an authority, and it's a nice way to transition students from traditional teaching to an inquiry teaching. By the end of my year, I wasn't even needing to sit in the circle. They could run the circle by themselves. So I highly suggest as you get started that when you're sitting them in a circle that you sit a little bit higher than them so that they have a much easier transition from going from traditional teaching to inquiry teaching. The other thing you need to do is you need to establish the rules of a discussion, and you need to teach them what accountable talk is. So one of the things is talking about what does a good conversation look like? What are our rules? And having them come up and brainstorm different ideas about what the rules could be. Things like one person speaks at a time and the other people listen. And really being really explicit with them about what does it mean to show good listening. That you're looking at the person who's speaking, you're engaged with them, you're nodding your head, you're not thinking of the next thing you want to say, you're listening to what they have to say. And modeling that for them at the beginning of your inquiry journey is really important as well. Also establishing the idea that no idea is a bad idea, that just because we may disagree with somebody doesn't mean that we can shoot them down. How do we respectfully disagree with somebody? And at the beginning, this is key to modeling that for students, that you have to model how you disagree and what that's supposed to look like. And it's a little messy, if I'm honest, at the beginning. Students will argue and they have a hard time with, they just want to be right and they just want to know the answer. And it does get messy. I can't pretend that it's not going to get messy, but as a teacher, it's something you just have to be able to push through and understand where you're going and what the purpose of it is, and model what you want them to be able to do. You also have to shift their focus from just regurgitating answers and giving the right answer to asking questions. This is a difficult shift for students. They're so used to teacher asks question, student gives answers. So when you put an artifact on the ground and you say, what do you wonder about this? Most students will want to immediately just give you the right answer. And part of a knowledge building circle is you're intending to deepen their thinking and deepen their inquiry. So one of the things that's important to do is to establish that you're not looking for answers. You're looking for questions. You're looking for wonderings. And that's important to get students to rehearse and practice as they go. That step one is asking questions, then coming up with I think statements of what their background knowledge, what they know, and then figuring out what they know by the end and supporting that with the facts that they've researched. That leads into knowing the difference. It's important that students know the difference between what they think they know and what they really know based on research, and that what they think they know, they can back that up. And that's a process that is developed over your entire unit. So as you start with your knowledge building circle and you have your artifacts, you've talked about group norms, you're going to start your knowledge building circle at that point. So you put the artifacts on the ground and you simply start by asking, look at the artifacts, what do you wonder? Now when I start this, I often give students a paper or sticky notes, and I have them silently asking questions. So not all sharing their ideas all at once, but silently asking questions. What do you wonder about the things that are on the ground? How could you group them together? What are some of the similarities and differences? Can you make connections between what you see here and something else that you already know? So if they're recording those down, then they have a basis to talk about that when you're ready to share that knowledge. Often these questions, again, need to be modeled. So students will give you something that may not sound very inquiry-based, and often paraphrasing what they've said and back to them so that they get the language of an inquiry knowledge building circle is an important thing for you to be able to do. Giving them sentence starters like, I wonder about this, or I see that there might be a connection between this and that. Recording their questions, if they haven't already done so, recording their questions down is really important. It helps you transition into building your success criteria in your WonderWall after. So make sure that when you're having your knowledge building circle and people are sharing their ideas, that you're recording those. I often don't do that myself, but I often will have a student record for me. So I have a chart paper going, and a student who's a really quick writer, who really likes writing on my chart papers, will often go up and they'll be the person that's just furiously recording all of the questions, and it doesn't matter the organization because you're going to take those and process those later. Once you have their questions, ask them to see if they can group things by similarity. So for instance, in the human body unit, we group things by organ systems. Which things do you think go together? And they put them together. In the structures unit, which do you think goes together? What pictures go together? There's pictures of bridges, there's pictures of pulleys, there's pictures of structures. How do those pictures go together? What's similar about them? What's different about them? What do you wonder about them? Maybe they have no idea. I find often in social studies when you show them these artifacts, they have no idea what they are. So there's a lot more wondering there because they have less background knowledge about things like First Nations or ancient civilizations. So there's a little bit more wondering that happens in those units. Once they will often start with giving you superficial questions, and you have to model for them how to deepen those questions. Why do you think that? How might that help? What might be the purpose of this? Why did I include this artifact in our collection here? Having them really starting to think about that and recording all of this as you go along on your chart paper. Once you have all their wonderings down, it's then time to move into the I think component of your knowledge building circle. And the I think component is where you have students look at the questions that they developed and starting to get to do, what do you think about this? What do you think about this group? What does this mean? What might we be learning about? What's going to be the purpose of our learning? Once you have all of that put together, you can start recording that on your WonderWall once you've grouped it. Now that it's been grouped and you've got your questions and you've got the I think kind of theories out there, and we talk about that they are theories because we might not have them at 9, 10, 11 years old. They may not have that backed up in terms of facts. So that's where I start integrating the WonderWall, is once we've organized that, then I'll see if I can switch. Get the camera down here. We look at the WonderWall and see, I've grouped, this is the WonderWall from my video, and I've grouped them into how my students have grouped the photos that I gave them, and then some of their deeper questions that they were asking as well. And that forms a basis of their WonderWall and their knowledge building circle. And that's just how you start. It's as simple as that. You just start building questions. And once you have it organized, then you're ready to move into developing key questions and success criteria that will then lead the rest of your unit, and what the learnings are that are going to be there that can be posted. So this initial knowledge building circle is really a good way to form a deeper understanding of what it is students are actually going to learn. And you'll come back to this knowledge building circle as you're learning more and more, as students are gaining more knowledge about your different learning goals and success criteria. But that's essentially how I get started. Thank you very much for checking out this video on knowledge building circles and WonderWalls. Please feel free to connect with me at www.madlylearning.com or in various social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Instagram at Madly Learning.